Welcome to The Favorites, the podcast, part of the Volume Podcast Network. I am Chad Millman of the Action Network. Today, I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, my companion, my compadre, my BFF, professional bettor, Simon Hunter. Hello, Simon.
Chad, what a show we have today, brother.
Dude, we got very special guests for a very special show. We like to figure out on this show what is going to happen in the future. I don't think any medium has been better at predicting what is going to happen in the future than The Simpsons, which not only is it the longest running scripted primetime show in American television history, it has been epically successful in predicting the most outrageous things, from voting scandals, which one of our guests predicted many, many years ago, to Olympic curling gold, whether it's sports, whether it's politics, whether it's polluted waters and three ice ages. The Simpsons have been predicting it for years. So I wanted to dig in on how they do it. Here to discuss it, two fellas, happen to be brothers. Both have worked on The Simpsons. One still does. They are industry veterans, Canadian royalty. One of them has directed one of the best documentaries on Canadian sense of humor in history. It's a pretty long list. But they are fantastic looking duo. Rob Cohen is a close buddy. He's been writing and directing his way through Hollywood for years on some of the biggest and best shows you've all watched, including The Simpsons, Wonder Years, Big Bang. My personal favorite, Somebody Somewhere, which made every top 10 list of the best shows last year. He also won an Emmy for his work on the Ben Stiller Show. If you're a Simpsons super fan, he was the screenwriter of one of the show's most beloved episode, Flaming Moe's, season 3. His brother Joel has been with The Simpsons for almost 30 years. He's an executive producer of the show. He's written nearly 40 episodes, some of which we are going to talk about today because they presaged some of the most outrageous moments literally in history, including a very special Treehouse of Horrors episode that is still relevant today. Like me, Joel is an author, which is the hardest thing to do, much harder than a long, successful career in Hollywood. His delightful book, How to Lose a Marathon, is available wherever books are sold. The boys, the Coen brothers, have a new animated show. It's hilarious. Super Team Canada, produced with Will Arnett. He also does a podcast. People may have heard of it. It's available on Crave TV and on YouTube. Fellas, it's been a long preamble. I apologize, but you've been around forever and there's a lot of stuff you've been doing. So welcome to the show. Rob, say hello.
Hello, Chad. This is the sound of my impressed voice.
Thank you. Joel, can you be equally impressed?
It would be hard to match that level of enthusiasm, but hello as well.
All right. I got to ask, first off, Joel, you've been there forever at this point. Why does this keep happening? How do you guys continue to predict the future?
We're getting into it right now, are
Yeah,
we?
let's just do it.
Let's
I
do
just want to
it.
hear it.
Let me tell everyone the sad truth, and then I will try to salvage it with a little bit of hope at the end. How about that?
All right.
So most of the time when people say Simpsons predicted it, what has happened is the Simpsons are a bunch of hacks. And we have merely reported on something that has already happened, but the world travels in cycles. So one of the things that people talk about recently or semi-recently is Simpsons predicted COVID. And they show this clip that was aired after SARS, if you guys remember SARS, one of our great viruses. And we did a joke on the show where like the newscaster Kent Brockman is saying, this Asian flu, blah, 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 blah. So people show that clip and they're like, Simpsons predicted COVID. In fact, we were like probably 3 years after the fact of SARS and just doing a sort of a joke or a take on stars. So a lot of times it's just that cycle of life that looks like there's a prediction. Add to that now the ability of everybody out in the world to use AI and crappy animation, and people are creating memes and little video clips that look like a prediction after, of course, the fact that it happened. The third thing I'll throw on the bummer pile is like, for example, there was these horrific fires in Los Angeles. There's all these things. Simpsons predicted the fire. Well, we have 800 episodes. Shockingly, we have had one with a fire in it. So you can find a clip of a fire and then say Simpsons predicted the fire. So those are the bummers. The good news is the day after I started the day after this aired, but one of our writers, Dan Graney, who Rob knows certainly, was writing an episode and he had to think of it was in the future. I forget the name of the episode, but it's in the future when Lisa becomes president and replaces the former president and had to name who the president was. Dan's first idea was President Depp because he thought, oh, Johnny Depp. Then he thought, no, no, that's too viable. It has to be the most ridiculous, idiotic name you could ever put in there. So he chose President Trump, which that was in 2000 that aired. So that was a clear prediction. And as you've mentioned, with all the last thing I'll say, with 800 episodes, we occasionally do stuff that then does prove prescient. Like we've predicted Olympic curling success and World Cup scores and Super Bowl teams, etc. So long-winded answer to say often it's either super laziness and a little bit of luck.
Well, look, I know Simon he's a Halloween special lover, and Joel, that's one of your many specialties. The sports angle on this, and I know Simon wants to ask about it because it also contains one of the greatest and most relevant prescient predictions that has happened in The Simpsons. But the sports angle is fascinating to me because everyone in that room is clearly a sports fan, and you guys have predicted so many things. You know, as I used to run ESPN the magazine, and in 2013, I think you guys did FIFA corruption, and you had a French version of ESPN the magazine that had the cover of, you know, French of a FIFA corruption, and a year later that's happening, right? And so where does the sports fandom come in to all this?
Tons and tons of sports fans. I wouldn't say everybody's a sports fan, but it's a lot of guys with nothing better to do than look at their phones all day. So there are a lot of sports fans. And then, of course, sports, just like anything else in society, trickles in for predictions. But like FIFA corruption, I probably could have told you in 1983 that there was FIFA corruption, right? So that we did a story about it is not so shocking. So anyhow, we just do a lot of sports episodes. I just had an episode on a couple weeks ago that sort of mirrored the Otani betting scandal. I don't know if you guys heard about that. It wasn't covered very much in the media,
Mm-mm.
but so we had a Macedonian baseball player who gets corrupted and starts betting on sports as well. So that was on a few weeks ago. But anyhow, so lots and lots of sports fans, I guess, is a half answer to the full question.
Simon, would you like to
Yeah,
close your
I'll
treehouse
go with
fandom?
Rob.
Yeah, do it.
Rob, in my mind, you grew up in the greatest generation of comedy. And not talking America, I'm talking Canadian comedy. You had Jim Carrey, Norm Macdonald, and even before that, you know, it's a bunch of legends where, you know, Martin Short, to me, one of the greatest comedic minds ever.
Yep.
What made that little pocket of Canadians so fucking funny? It's like crazy. Like, even all these years later, like I go back and I watch old Norm. It's so hard for comedy to hold up 30 years later. And
Yeah.
that's how you know these people are way ahead of their time. Like you're a part of it. Like you are part of this group of people that put themselves out there in a unique way. What do you think makes Canada produce these heavyweight comedy styles?
Well, you're giving me, if there's more than 100%, you're giving me more than that credit for something that I really didn't do, because I agree with you. You know, every country mostly has their own unique sense of humor. And obviously, if you're in the United States or Britain or Canada, it's more mainstream just because of the way they make TV shows. But I do agree with you. It's Canada, you know, for its relatively small population, has generated these hitters in comedy forever. And there's a million theories, but I think it's really because we're stuck between England and the United States. And we are watching the US and observing them, and we're sort of watching Britain, and we know we're kind of British. kind of American, but we're also uh, navel gazers to a degree, and that internalized thought process creates this weird mishmash that is this observational comedy. And there's no real theory, but I will say I agree with you. I mean, to me, SCTV is the greatest sketch show and sketch group of all time, and Python is a very, very tight tie with them. And then everything else is a big drop off. They're good, but they're never going to be that level. And I think so much of it is just being insane because you have terrible weather and you're stuck inside and you're envious of your neighbors, and you just kind of get this distorted, passive aggressive uh, style of comedy. So I think that's why Canada's created that. And then you have people like Jim Carrey, is obviously brilliant, or Martin Short, or any of the SCTV people, that when they go to the States, they're viewed as these exotic, weird aliens that happen to live on the landmass that's connected to you. But their view on things is so different, and they're great mimics. And I think that's what's led to the Canadian style of comedy.
And I love the old theory of the cold and the harsh weather, just like in England, when you come
Yep.
over here, it makes you need to laugh about life. And that's why, I always joke, I go back and visit family just about how even a local guy at the pub could be the funniest person you've ever met in your entire life when I go back to England. And I've had that with Canadians. Like I've had a lot of friends who've come down here, and I feel like what you're talking about, they just don't know. They're just so different, especially to Americans, even though,
Yeah.
they're not even that far away. And yeah, I love, Mike Myers talks about it where, Canadians, they'll be talking and be like, oh, and he died the other day. So sad.
Yep.
And it's just like really funny when they don't know they're being funny. They just, throw these type of things in. And yeah, for someone like you, I just thought it was interesting where you really grew up in the perfect era of that type of
Yeah.
comedy. And
Yeah.
yeah, obviously you don't want to take any credit for it, so I won't keep pushing it on you.
I think, I mean, the last thing I'll say on that is I really think bad weather has something to do with it, because you have Britain, you think about the United States, you have New York, you have Boston. You rarely hear of like a hot, brilliant, edgy comic from Tempe. Like it's not, it's just, I think being stuck inside and in sort of crappy weather, and observing and having a lot of time with your own thoughts, and then watching TV creates that flow out of you. And I think if you think about Monty Python, just as an example, it's crappy weather. They had no money. They had no support. They were these guys that were very well educated, and people thought they were weird. So they just banded together and, using amazing brain power, created Monty Python, which is incredible. So I think that to me is sort of the perfect soup for how you get to places like that.
I feel like you were just throwing shade at Arizona's own David Spade.
I love Spade, but name your second favorite Arizona comic,
I
Chad.
can't do it.
Yeah.
Okay, next topic.
Gary Shandling? Is he from
Uh,
Arizona?
That's pretty
he
good.
moved there though.
Okay.
He doesn't count.
Aren't you
Doesn't
guys
count.
sponsored by the state of Arizona Tourism Board?
Yeah, exactly. Comedy clubs in Arizona.
Kiss that goodbye.
Joel, both of you, I know, are huge sports fans. Give me a sense from your own experience how sports informs, even the slightest way, what you're doing day to day with The Simpsons, or just your enjoyment of the industry that you're in.
Well, I've very, I'd say, deep sports fan. Of course, during football season, I think I do 5 fantasy teams and pick 'em. Rob and I have been in a pick 'em league for a long time together.
You're Canadian. Who's your team? Local.
Well, when we were growing up in Calgary, we used to get channels from Washington State. So I
Right.
became a Seahawks fan. But as you know, once you get into fantasy football, you've corrupted yourself horribly, and you can't be a fan to anybody anymore. So my favorite fan is my wallet. My favorite team is my wallet, and just trying to win, which I never do, but I love it. Um, and then right now, like, I'm deep in the hockey playoffs. We're in a bit of a moral quandary right now because we're from Calgary, which despises the city of Edmonton, but Edmonton is the last Canadian team, and they're playing Florida, which is maybe the worst American place for there to be a hockey team. So we're kind of being forced to cheer for the Oilers, but I am, as a Patriot. Um, and then at work, everyone's betting on sports all the time. Another thing I'll just throw in the pile. I wrote a book with Dan Patrick, your old colleague from ESPN, about football. that I really enjoyed. So I'm deep in sports as much as I can be outside of work and love it in every capacity.
But
I
I will
once
also,
pushed. Go ahead, Rob.
I'll add to that. Oh, sorry. I'll add to that I started at Gracie Films is the company that produces The Simpsons. So I started there a long time ago. And even as a naive pearl clutching Canadian lad, I was stunned at the level of sports gambling and just gambling that happens at that company, like numbers that are shocking. But people that were very into it and still do it, and bookies and the whole thing. And even they have a thing called the Gracie Pool, which has been going on for 20 plus years. Joel and I have participated in it, but that's the least serious level of sports gambling they do, and that is a serious pool to get in. So if you're easily scared, I would avoid Gracie Films when it comes to gambling. But if you love sports, it's a great place to be, and The Simpsons is great because there's so many sports fans.
But just to throw one last thing, sorry, Chad, I see
Yeah,
your
yeah.
mouth opening. You're either about to throw up or to talk. Either way, either are welcome. But I was gonna say, like, it's writers' rooms are like 8 to 10 people stuck in a room all day for anywhere from 8 to sometimes 15 hours. I mean, it's inevitable that if it's a lot of people that are into sports, there's going to be a lot of bets coming out of that environment.
Yeah, I
I
was gonna say gambling and comedy though goes hand in hand, Chad. Like most, especially in my line of work, a lot of comedians who I've met in my life, especially when I was living in Vegas, was all because of sports betting. And they'll be in the books and they'll be like, "Hey, you got to come meet this guy." And you go over there, and again, that's how I met Norm Macdonald. This guy was a notorious gambler who lived in the book, and that's someone that I, ran into, and I knew right away. People told me, do not tell him you're a fan or that you enjoy his work. It will be a much better experience. And from him, I've done that with every comedian I've ever met with that. And they all love betting. And I think it's the rush they chase, the same thing they kind of get on stage. And what, I would love to know about the Simpsons writers is when they're predicting these Super Bowls, is there something behind it, right? Are they trying to speak into existence with their own bets, or is that just, once again, just by luck?
I think at some point we can all tell who the favorites are in a season, so you can make a somewhat of a prediction of, if I said narrow it down to 5 teams that could be in the Super Bowl, you'd probably be right on 3 or 2 of them. So it's mostly luck. What gets freaky is sometimes we've actually got the score right,
Yeah.
things like that. So that is pure luck. But Simon, as a professional bettor, I say bet on everything you see on The Simpsons because they're all going to come true. You've got nothing to lose.
Yep.
I want to know how we get into the Gracie Films pool. It feels like exactly the kind of pool we'd want to be in, Simon.
It's
I'll let
it's
you.
it's a substantial. I'm happy to ask. It's a substantial investment at the beginning of the season. You are playing against. It's all with the spread, and there are some people in the pool that use extra resources and outside sources for their information. Um, but the great thing about it is that if you win a week or you win the whole pot, somebody will deliver fresh cash to your location. And when I say fresh cash, it is unused bills that are perfectly crisp in an envelope to your location of choice. And that thrill is, it's got nice payouts, but if you happen to win, you will have somebody pull up in a manila envelope with a manila envelope of cash that looks incredible. And that's the moment you want to savor.
Let's say Chad knows my favorite competitions in America are tax-free competitions. So you're
Yes,
speaking my
exactly.
language right now.
Exactly.
Do you guys remember the gold sheet, Simon? Is that still around, the gold sheet?
Oh yeah.
It's not around anymore. We actually tried to buy it when I was at ESPN. Um, and it's just not really a thing anymore. It's not necessary,
Right.
Uh,
given the way
we've
the
got
world is. But why do you say?
a guy that Rob and I both have worked with, and a wonderful guy, and an incredible Simpsons writer, and legendary and really great guy. He was a avid reader of the gold sheet and avid bettor. I won't reveal his name, but he one time bet, I'm going to say $40,000 on a presidential election, and lost. But anyhow, he was a real deep reader of the gold sheet. I remember even like preseason football, him telling me like that's where you make all your money is in preseason football. And I never believed that then, and still don't believe it now. But he would have the gold sheet in front of him all the time.
I will just add to the depravity of The Simpsons and gambling, where I won't say a name, but there was a person there who made a lot of money and basically placed two bets on the color of the Gatorade that would be splashed on a coach and bet against themselves on the color so that they were covering every possible color of Gatorade and were rooting basically against themselves, hoping for this color, knowing that they couldn't win because they spread the money out too much on the Gatorade. But there's definitely enthusiasm for cash-free earnings at that show.
Yeah.
The my favorite Gatorade story is Jared Lorenzen, who you guys might remember was a 300-pound quarterback at Kentucky. And
Yes.
then he made it to the NFL. He was a backup for the Giants when
Right.
they made it to the Super Bowl and against the Patriots. And I can't remember, I feel like it was the second Super Bowl. And before the game, which happened to be in Arizona, he was on the field and he texted all of his friends back in Kentucky the color of the Gatorade on both sidelines.
Oh, wow.
So he wasn't telling them which team he thought was going to win or giving them anything other than if you think the Patriots are going to win, this is the color of the Gatorade. If you think the Giants are going to win, this is the color of the Gatorade. And it's gotten to the point where that and the national anthem, like, how have you guys not done a national anthem controversy with a famous singer and the betting on that as an episode?
You may have predicted it. The part I took of that whole story that's sad is that there's only one color of Gatorade on each sideline. Like teams could afford a variety, a smorgasbord of different Gatorades. We don't know which one's going to be dumped, but it's sad to think that they just commit to yellow or blue or orange or whatever.
Now,
Jared
I
Lorenzen
do have
scored a
a,
touchdown.
I do have a Simpson question that, this is just something you would know because it's something you have to be inside if this is true or not. I'm obviously grew up South Park fan, Simpsons fan, never liked Family Guy. The South Park episode with the manatees pushing the balls to make a Family Guy episode, is it true you guys sent them a bottle of, what was it, champagne or wine?
I don't believe that's true.
Oh.
I mean, we love that episode. They have another episode, which maybe is the same one where they did Simpsons did it.
Yeah,
Simpsons did
Simpsons did it.
Yeah, which we have a really good relationship with South Park, and shockingly to so many people, pretty much with Family Guy now as well.
Yeah, because to me, like Bill Hader, a guy who does work for South Park, he felt like he was like a Simpsons guy, and that you could really see his style. You can tell he just grew up on Simpsons, and he's taken a lot of that to South Park. And to me, that was one of their best hires ever. Where it's just like that's a match made in heaven. Where again, the influence of Simpsons and it's on comedy. It's the same thing with SNL. It changed everything, and there's little pieces of all this comedy and all this new comedy. So yeah, I just had to ask that question because that's like, as a South Park fan, I always wondered, okay, are the South Park and Simpsons actually cool? So I love to hear that you guys like each
Oh yeah,
other.
we love those guys. And Bill Hader's been a voice on the show a bunch of times and is amazing, incredible. Yeah.
Is there a South Park, Simpsons, Family Guy pool that exists? And if so, maybe we can start one.
Well, forgive me, Rob, I'm talking more than I should, but we do this thing at The Simpsons, which is equally sad, but we do a fantasy football league for summer box office. So we auction off movies. We have $100 fictional money, and you bid on the movies that we divide into lots, and big movies get split into thirds or quarters or halves, depending on how big we think they are. But that idea is internal to The Simpsons, been going on for 20 years. But then I've heard that Family Guy and maybe South Park have taken on that idea and have done it themselves internally.
I feel like you guys are much bigger gamblers than I had any sense of it before. And now I
Yeah.
understand, like, when I'm hanging out with Rob and it's the middle of the football season and I'm staying at his house and I land at, 7 o'clock and it's 10 o'clock East Coast time and I'm at his house and I'm having dinner and I'm falling asleep, but he keeps asking me questions about who I like for the weekend. It's all starting to make sense now.
Well, I also when Rad Chad shows up and stays at his Hollywood mansion, we're so excited that you're here, but also you know everything. So whether it's the fantasy pool that we're in or just some insane situation like what's happening with Aaron Rodgers now. Like it's you are honestly the only person that I feel can make sense of a lot of ridiculous situations. So like Dak Prescott, you go, why aren't the Cowboys drafting X, Y, and Z? Do they really like Dak? Like you're the only guy I can go to get the answers. But at the same time, there's all this weekly drama where you go, you wonder like the Bengals a few years ago when they were hot. It's like, do you think they can keep the heat on and get to the Super Bowl and win it? Because it's so out of the blue that you're talking about the Bengals in the Super Bowl. So you are the guy that I go to for everything. And sometimes it's connected to the fantasy league that Joel and I are in, and sometimes it isn't.
Simons, hear that? I am the guy.
He's the guy.
I was gonna ask Rob, is Chad the best guest ever? Is it like he eats barely anything, maybe uses the bathroom twice, bed is made him perfect every morning after he wakes up? He's just easygoing.
He's we love it when Chad is here. Our son loves Chad. We have photo documentation of them partying for years and years and years. But when Rad Chad is in town, we are very, very excited.
You know, Chad only takes 3 beers and he's in bed by 9 p.m. It's
It's
good.
so true.
We love it.
Have you guys thought about Super Bowl futures already? Is there a Gracie Films pool that takes advantage of Super Bowl futures? Joel, do you have a position that you've taken that you would like to share?
I hate the season long bets. I need the quick hits. Like I hate thinking like, oh, will the Giants win more or less than 9 games a year? So no, I don't, there's no future discussion. I'm sure again, like I said, we could all talk about which teams we think will be back this year, but I have no official financial position.
All right.
Also, the Simpsons and like every writer's room that I've ever been, there's certainly a handful of rabid gamblers, one or two that have a big problem. But you're sitting in a room forever and you've got phones now before you didn't have phones, and people are going to naturally check out scores or they're going to do online gambling. And so that just leads to filling in the gaps between pitching on a story where you start talking about gambling and football season, especially. But I just think it's only increased.
Yeah,
People
and
will
everyone's
bet.
got a runner now, right? Even if you're in a state that doesn't have it, you know a guy in a state that does that can
Of
do something
course.
for you. And
It's
I
online now,
was
right?
gonna
It's
say, if
so
you're gonna
easy.
make one futures bet, Joel, are you in LA for work?
Yeah, yep.
Dude, throw a little either on the Rams or the 49ers. Get involved in California a
Can't,
little bit.
can't do it, man. I don't have the patience. I need it fast. I was gonna say we
You bet it
people
and
bet
forget
on
it.
like
Bet it and forget it.
people bet like on stuff like what time the showrunner will let us leave. We'll bet on if someone has to go out of the room and prepare like 10 jokes for one spot in the script, we will bet on which of the 10. We bet the other day on a guy we work with that loves to get tattoos, and someone came in and presented 5 tattoos, only one of which was real, and we bet on which tattoo was the real one. The answer, he got it on his wrist. It says no Lex because he lost his Rolex, so it says no Lex on his wrist.
When you were doing you did a Treehouse of Horrors episode
Mhm.
where Homer went to vote. It was Barack Obama, John McCain. This presaged a lot of freaking chaos. Explain what happened in the episode and obviously how it predicted more and more chaos in the voting world.
Well, I hate to keep going back. I think it's just like you see these trends that are obvious, right? Where like obviously, gerrymandering of voting districts and stuff, and you can just tell there's going to be voting chaos in our future and people restricting people's rights to votes and all that stuff. So all that stuff was bubbling. I believe with that one and with many other times, like it takes 9 months to make an episode of The Simpsons. So a lot of times we don't do really topical stuff. But I think in that case, we literally held it or prepared like multiple versions and then just slotted in the most likely one at the last minute of who was going to be on the ballot. We've done that a few times where we just because we can't risk it to the very last minute. So I mean, again, I guess I'm answering the first question. It was just that idea that all that stuff was in the water already. That idea of what will happen to elections and voting chaos. We probably got a little bit lucky, but then just even if you're talking about specific names on the ballot, I think that was just literally waiting till the Friday before it aired on the Sunday.
Yeah, and then since then, of course, there have been nearly $1 billion in payments for the libel of voting machine irregularities. Uh, so nice job. Nailed that one.
And I've made like half of that billion, so it's worked out pretty well for me.
But I also feel like when you're doing these things, it's almost like you're sitting in the room, and when you're not betting on tattoos and jokes and your NFL pools, you're sitting there and you're thinking, and this feels very much in line with how comedy writers would think. What is the worst thing, the darkest thing, the most outrageous thing that can happen? And let's write that into existence. Is that ever the framework for the starting or a starting point for an episode or a conversation?
Yeah, Rob, you want to answer that? I don't know. You answered both.
Well, I'll let Joel answer the specific Simpsons things, but I'll give you two very fast examples that I witnessed back in the wild times of the late '90s and early 2000s. There were two different well-known television shows that they would make very serious bets. One of which was, could a PA eat 5 cans, the large cans of Heinz beans? Joel, you know the story?
No.
So it's like when you go to the market, there's the Heinz baked beans, and then there's these super family size. So they started throwing cash on the table if the PA could eat these cans of beans. So cutting to the chase, the PA did it. No, they weren't doing any work. It took hours, and the PA was choking it down, and people kept throwing more money on it. And I think on the table was like $25,000 in cash, which is why they had that in their pocket. Is crazy. So now the PA, he wanted to win because he was going to get a big cut. And then somebody after the PA had got the last spoonful of beans down said, I'm going to double the pot if he doesn't crap his pants in the next hour. And the PA literally ran outside and ran towards a hill near Warner Brothers Studios where this was happening. He had to go to the bathroom so badly. He wasn't even thinking, where's the bathroom? He just ran straight towards a hill and had machine gun diarrhea all over this hill. So then the next argument was, does that count? Because he was off property. Like, there was such depravity going on with this. It was like, does it count? Somebody has to go up the hill to make sure it's his diarrhea.
Yeah.
So there's levels and levels of insanity. And then the other
And
story is
today, a beautiful tree grows on that hill thanks to
Yes,
that diarrhea that we all
it's a mighty diarrhea oak.
Yeah, yeah.
Just a field of bean plants.
Yeah. And so then the last one in one sentence is, there was a room that I was in where the showrunner had a problem with some powdered medication that he enjoyed inhaling. And people made bets on which part of his body would fall off first. And it was a lot of money. And the winner was his septum. So they go dark and make a lot of money.
Yes.
I was actually saying like for
an episode.
For ideas.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Just edit those out.
Those even better.
Are better.
Joel, I'll hand it to you.
If you can get to a funny, dark place, we all sometimes think of where do you end up, but then we gotta have to kind of get there in a funny, dark way. So yeah, sometimes thinking of a bleak, apocalyptic nightmare, as long as we can get there in an interesting, funny way, we've done that many, many times.
Well, that is like a very similar, Simon, you were saying it before, like there is a mindset and a sort of character trait where gamblers and comedy writers live in a very dark space. Like the bigger the risk, the less your expectation is that you will succeed, the more you are planning that the other side of this is going to be miserable and you're willing to live in that misery. Comedy writing is as big a risk as betting. Like Rob, you go down from Canada, you're not thinking I'm going to end up having this beautiful life. You're thinking I just want to be funny.
I've never thought I could be funny, but yes, I think it's a risk because you are deciding when to speak, and if you speak, you hope what you say is received well and is funny, and otherwise you shut down. But then in your head, you're like, you can't be quiet too long because I'm going to get fired, so I need to speak again, and then the cycle continues, and yeah, it has its own challenges.
Yeah, I think Rob just nailed it too, where you don't even know what's funny until you actually say it, and like give other people's reactions to it, right? Because that's that's the challenging part with comedy. It's all subjective, and
Oh yeah.
as someone that does love dark comedy, I'll laugh at really easy, lame jokes all the time. Like even jokes that miss are some of my favorite jokes. So it's like it is all random, and I view it as what we talking a little about here with The Simpsons. It's like I would love what's the highest rate you guys ever got? Do you ever get like what is it Y14? Like what's the limit you can push it now that we have presidents cursing on national television? Like, is there a limit now?
Know if there's I don't even know what ratings are anymore,
Right.
guidance ratings are anymore, but we're sort of bound a little bit by the constraints of the show that is established over 40 years or 30 years, but we've we've stretched as society's appetite for all that stuff is stretched, but like we had an episode once where Marge said BFD, like big fucking deal, and Fox bleeped the F. Like just the letter F was offensive in that context. So and then we're doing an episode now with we've been told we can't show Homer's butt anymore. And stuff like that. So like the world is changing and we're just kind of dodging and it's always lawyers trying to protect themselves, but I don't know what the ratings are anymore. And no one seems to care also, right?
Right. And my last Simpsons question, it's a stupid conspiracy. Plopper the pig. What is the deal with that fucking pig? Is there something deep behind it, or is it just Spider Pig walking on the ceiling?
That is one of the things that I think has shocked everybody so much that it talk about a pig with someone with digestive problems. This is a perfect play into that. But yeah, in the movie they just put the pig, and then like that spider pig joke. I think if you when you heard that pitched, it sounds like that's a pretty easy lame joke, but that has like registered and resonated so strongly with everybody. Spider Pig, and people love Spider Pig, and in the writers' room, there's a Spider Pig hanging from the ceiling, and like that's just one of those things where you just didn't know how big it would be, and it seemed like a pretty easy half joke to start with, but for whatever reason, people love that, and the deal with it is just we don't know, and but God bless it.
This makes total sense now, Simon, the way you just described it. I feel like being in a writer's room, Rob and Joel, it's a little bit like you're chasing. You lose a bet. All right, how quickly can I get the next joke out there to see if I can get the win? Versus, all right, do I hold back? Do I want to keep my powder dry? Do I need to build my bankroll? Like when you're in the room, Joel, you start. Is there that anxiety, that sweat, that energy that you feel that is very similar?
Oh yeah, like what Rob said was, you could have been talking about me. Like I didn't speak for the first 6 months, and then I was told if I don't start talking, I'm going to be fired because you're so nervous. And then at some point you have to pitch, which is just really exposing yourself pretty raw. And it's a laugh or it's not a laugh, but then you quickly just realize that everybody next to you is doing the same thing over and over and over again. So we're all sort of gambling where the stakes are pretty low unless you get on a really, really bad streak where you don't have anything in for maybe a year and then you get fired. But yeah, that you got to just keep throwing stuff out there. But I was very intimidated at the beginning.
My favorite Larry David story on SNL is that he kept getting his shit taken off the board, and every day he'd go and they take it off. He goes, "Another great day at the office, perfect, just perfect." I love that story. Just he lived for failure, and that's why he's one of the greatest comedic minds ever to live.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's all like the same with gambling, like you said. It's especially if you're in a live action show that has an audience, the to me the highest pressure is when you're shooting in front of the audience on a Friday night and you're on the floor and a joke tanks. You have seconds to rush over to the showrunner and pitch a fix while the showrunner and the cast and the crew are there and the audience. And the worst thing is if your pitch tanks, because especially if it gets to the actors and it sucks. It's like you cannot find a corner small enough to hide in, but you got to go back and stick your face in the wood chipper again the next time it happens. So it's really uh, that's part of the fun of it, but at the same time, it's like this is my opening. I've got to make it, and it's better to try than to be silent.
Well, do you remember for both of you the first time sitting in this kind of environment when you had a pitch or a joke and it worked and you felt that rush like, okay, I've got one on the board? Joel, you first.
Like I said, I really went the first few months without talking, and then I was told I have to start pitching. So I can even tell you the first joke I got on the show. we used to do this thing where we'd send people off. Everyone gets stuck on like we can't find a joke here. So you idiot, go write 10 or 30 and come back and pitch them to us, and hopefully one will fit. So I was that guy, and the setup was that Marge was mad at Homer, and he said, "What do I do to fix this?" And someone said, "Take her to dinner or maybe a show." And then my joke was, "What about Benihana, where dinner is the show?" And that was the joke that got on the show, and that broke the ice. So that was
And 30 years later, you're still
with that joke. Shockingly, I'm still here. I know.
Legacy joke.
I know.
Rob,
There
what about
go.
you?
I would say as far as being on staff of a show, it was probably the Ben Stiller show. We were on the Fox network and they absolutely hated our guts and we hated them. So we were doing sort of a parody of a shitty Fox show. And I wanted it to be introduced by the crappiest mascot ever. So it was somebody in a ratty Fox costume. And Ben was like, well, what do we call this guy? And the worst joke ever, I said, what if we call him Foxy, the Fox Network Fox? And then I realized as the words came out of my mouth, that is the hackiest pitch of all time. And Ben just fell over laughing. And in my mind, I was like, why are you laughing? That's terrible. But then I just shut my mouth and let him enjoy it. And sort of had one moment of comfort where it felt like, okay, that one was a winner for whatever reason.
Rob, I want you to tell people, and this is my last sort of inside Simpsons prediction, because this one is so outrageous. It can't just be Joel like this had already happened, so it was in the ether and we just played off it. There's no way possible. Rob, you are the inspiration for the artwork for Milhouse. Explain what happened and how that came to be, because Milhouse has one of the greatest predictions in Simpsons history.
Well, I cannot claim any credit for this, but the quick version of the story was back when the show started, they wanted to use a Korean animation company to save money. And so they were waiting for the designs. The designs came back horribly and they needed to restart them, but they wanted to send references so they could copy the exact look they did want. So one of the amazing writers on the show called me in one day and he said, I want to show you something. He showed me a drawing of Milhouse and he goes, this is you. And because of the way that I look and I would wear shorts and a t-shirt all the time and have a giant nose, he explained that they had been taking photos of real people and sending those to Korea so that they couldn't screw up the artwork, that they just would mimic the photos and make that character. So I was delighted that that happened. I get zero money from it, but they just took images of actual people and they were doing it to save the animation process because they were so far behind. And then as a tag to that, if you look at the early Simpsons episodes, the artwork on the fridge that is supposed to be of the kids is the horrible animation that the Koreans were sending back because it looks like a terrible kids drawing.
All right. So in 2010, Milhouse predicts who's going to win the Nobel Prize in what I can only imagine was a very high stakes pool at school for Milhouse and Homer. He predicted, I can't even say the guy's name, Bengt Holmstrom from MIT as the winner of the 2010 Nobel Prize. He also had in his pool Ben Feringa as a possible winner in 2010. In 2016, Joel, both of them won the Nobel Prize for their respective fields. Explain yourself.
You'll see a gun approach from off screen as I start talking. um, Again, this is they're aside from gamblers, the other thing the Simpsons is famous for is a lot of nerds and super smart people. And my guess is, because I can't recall any of this, that these people literally researched who are the leading candidates, just like I'm sure Simon would, and like the odds, and looked forward on I don't even know what the prizes were for, chemistry or literature or whatever, but I'm sure they researched these guys and who are the leading candidates or working on developments, and took a swing. And again, the names are so obscure to morons like me that it sounds funny when it's on TV regardless. And then I didn't, until this moment, even know that they'd actually won. So I have some bets to collect myself.
You did not.
There's a lot of stuff happens here, and you can't keep track of everything, you know?
That's like Simon when we were betting on the Pope and we came so close because we had it like all figured out that it was going to be someone who wasn't of the top five candidates who sort of had the right profile. And instead of the guy from Chicago, we went with the guy from France, and we were right there. We could have written a Simpsons episode.
Yeah. How could you not pick the guy from Chicago?
I know. I felt terrible about it after it happened, and we've discussed it aggressively.
Okay.
Our claim to fame is that luckily the guy we had on did mention his name. So we weren't a total loss, but it was right there for me and Chad. We totally missed on it.
I got very locked in on the guy from France. I got locked in. I felt like, I never thought it would be an American, but I thought everything the American had was the right profile. And it wasn't going to be one of the guys who went in because it's never the person that everybody thinks has the shortest odds as they go into the conclave. So to me, it had to be someone who was in Europe, had experience working in communities where immigration and immigrants were a big factor, who could help expand the church, and this guy in France, because immigration in France was a lot of it was Africans moving to France. And so he had connections to the African community. Like, Rob, I went deep. And I just didn't see the dude with the background in Peru getting into that spot. You know
I
what?
heard a lot of the Cardinals were making calls from inside the Vatican, tipping off bettors like you guys on the outside. So the whole thing's fixed.
Here's the color of the smoke.
Yeah, I didn't get any of those calls, Joel.
No. Oh, you're not on the inside.
Amazingly so.
Yeah.
Joel Cohen, Rob Cohen, Super Team Canada. Everybody go watch it on YouTube. Everybody watch it on Crave. You guys crushed. Thanks for coming on The Favorites today. Simon and I will return with our next episode of The Favorites Tuesday on the Action Network YouTube page. Download us from Spotify, Apple Pods, wherever you get your pods. Rate, review, subscribe, leave us 5 stars. Say whatever you want. Feedback is a gift. Till next time, love you.